I want to prove to you today that apartheid is still alive and kicking. People are saying, no, this is the new South Africa. We are the rainbow nation. Let me prove to you that we are still living under that ideology. You know, when the Nationalist Party came into power in 1948, they introduced laws to take away the people's land. Why? Because they needed the labor of black people. Remember, before 1948, it was the English that were in power. So the nationalist government is the government of the Afrikaners. And at the time, Afrikaners were very, very poor. You know, they worked in unskilled jobs. So the ideology was introduced in order to help to empower, to to skill their people, but they couldn't do that in isolation, you know, like by isolating black people. So they needed the labor. So in order to be able to control the people, to force them to come and work in the cities, they had to introduce laws, right, to take away the land, because they knew that our people refused to work. Our people said, no, we are not working for you. Even in the 1800s, what they did, they brought in slaves from Malaysia because our people refused to work. They refused to be slaves. They said, no, we have the land. We don't need you. And what is this? Because the concept of, you know, leaving your home every day to go and work for somebody was something that they couldn't comprehend. It didn't make sense because it was not and part of their culture. It is not who they are, you know, that somebody has to come and dominate you. It didn't work that way back then. They even brought slaves again from India, who worked in the sugar canes in Natal, because people said, we are not working for you. I have land, I have cattle, I'm rich, I'm wealthy, I have everything that I need. But because monopoly capital couldn't thrive without the labor of black people, they had to come up with laws to force people to leave their villages, the rural areas, to come to the cities and work. And what they did was they introduced the heart tax, meaning that each and every heart had to pay taxes with money. And the people didn't have money, they had cattle. And they said, no, we have cattle. They said, no, 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 we want money. So now young people, young men were forced to leave their homes to come to the cities to work, to get money in order to be able to pay the taxes. So all the older people and their wives stayed at home or in their villages. So they lived on the remittances from the young men who worked in the city. So they were able to go home during Easter and in December, but most of the time it was in December because they couldn't even afford just to go home during the year because the wages were very little. They just couldn't cope. They lived in hostels without their families, without their wives, without their children. They only saw them once a year. So now people are working, and then they also brought people from Malawi and from Zimbabwe to come and work here in the mines as domestic workers, you know, um, because the labor was in shortage, and also because they just wanted to make our people, you know, understand that if you don't do this, we'll bring in people who will come and work. Because you don't want to work, you're complaining that the wages is too little. We will bring your own people. Our so-called brothers and sisters came and worked for them as a way of punishing us. They used them and they allowed themselves to be used. And that is still happening even today. When the ANC came into power, they opened the borders. Our borders are porous. People are coming in and out as they please, illegally. Yet there are laws that have been put in place with regards to um, foreigners, irrespective of where you come from, whether you come from Africa or overseas. But there are laws. For example, it is clear that You can't come to South Africa to work unless you have a rare skill, something that South Africans don't know how to do. That is the only reason to employ a foreigner. And yet today, people are coming from Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Mozambique, all over Africa. I mean, 53 states of Africa are here and they are working. All of them, they have a job to go to in the morning. It's either they are employed or self-employed. Yet 60% of Black youth of South Africa are unemployed. They are outside loitering the streets. They don't know what to do with their lives. So the Afrikaners gave their people skills in the 1950s to ensure that they get salaries whereby they'll be able to make a living, live a good life for themselves. But all the unskilled work went to Black people and very few were semi-skilled. They also introduced what was called Bantu education, education for Black people, which is meant to make them hewers of wood and drawers of water. So you wouldn't be anything above that. So when you look at the education system today, no more technical high schools, no skills at all. So when you leave high school, there isn't anything that you can do with your life. If you cannot afford to go to university, or your parents don't have the money, or you can't get a loan from the government, then it means then you have to sit at home because you have no skill. And all the skill work is now given to immigrants from all over Africa, except Black people in South Africa. So our people are still struggling, are still living in poverty. 80% of Black people in this country are poor. They have no jobs, they have no skills. And even if you went to university to get a degree, hundreds of thousands of graduates, Black graduates, are sitting at home with that education. So we are still hewers of wood and drawers of water. Because at the end of the day, we go to the workplace and we get the most useless jobs. The wages are so low that it's difficult for people to make a living. Now, the Black government is still ensuring that the money or the wealth of white people is still intact. Wealth of white people went up by more than 50% ever since the ANC took over. More than 50%. And what about the wealth of Black people? None. No wealth has been created in 30 years of Black rule. Only a few individuals that were handpicked are successful, are becoming rich. They're owning this, they're owning that. But the majority and the reality of Black people is still poverty. We're living in townships, in squatter camps. We're living in shacks. We own nothing. If you go to the city of Joburg right now, you will not find a single shop owned by a Black South African. Shops there are run by Somalians and Ethiopians and Nigerians and Zimbabweans, no South Africans. In our townships today, all the businesses that we had are now owned by them. So our children grow up in an environment where they don't see Black people succeeding or doing anything meaningful. Young people are on drugs, high on drugs, loitering the streets, miserable. It is hard to make a living for ourselves today. And yet they say, no, apartheid is gone. Who owns the wealth? When you need a job, who do you go to? Still them. If you go to the suburbs, who live there? It's still them. The government is still building more townships. No development whatsoever. There was a time when I was in school, we had a lot of activities, extramural activities. There was sports every Wednesday, remember? We knew every Wednesday we had to go to the sports ground. It was one of our favorite days. We have community halls, arts, culture. Everything was there, but not anymore. Our children grow up not knowing what a theater is. They don't. I remember there were beauty pageants, remember? Young girls, beautiful girls would go there, they would win prizes. I mean, there was so much activity. We didn't sit around doing nothing, but yet today, go in all the townships. The children, the young people, they're not doing anything. They're just sitting there. And we tell them that, oh, we grew up in this hall. We used to do dance and music. We used to do acting. It's not there anymore. Doesn't exist anymore. Our kids don't know what we're talking about. So you tell me, is apartheid still gone? Give us examples. Just comment. Comment. Give us examples to say, no, apartheid is gone. It's different now. The struggle, when we were fighting, it was never about getting tenders from government. It was never about opening up the border so that everybody can come in unannounced, unaccounted for. It was never about that. Why have we forgotten the bloodshed? Why people were present? Why people were exiled? How can we forget that? I'm not saying that we should go on hating people. No, but I'm just saying the struggle is still continuing. And we should be taking the baton from our ancestors. But now we are sitting here relaxed. All we do is complain. We are lied to by politicians each and every day. Vote for us, we'll do this for you. Why can't they do now before we even vote for them, so that at least they give us confidence that when we have voted for them, they will deliver? We are being used and abused by politicians, promising us things that they know that they will never fulfill. So let us continue the struggle. Let us continue fighting for our dignity. Let us remember what our people went through and what we are still going through. Apartheid is not yet gone.